I knew it was going to be difficult to put the label on it and really claim this relationship for what it is and move out of the soul friend scenario. Because it was really a conflict in my inner body. Because I knew the deficit in his development. I knew where instinctively that this was going to be a very long journey. This was going to be very hard. And this was going to continue to destroy and dismantle everything that I thought was what I'm supposed to want or need or how to behave.
Welcome to the Relationship Diversity Podcast, where we celebrate, question, and explore all aspects of relationship structure diversity, from soloamory to monogamy to polyamory and everything in between, because every relationship is as unique as you are. We'll bust through societal programming to break open and dissect everything we thought we knew about relationships, to ask the challenging but transformational questions: who am I, and what do I really want in my relationships? I'm your guide, Carrie Jaroslaw, best-selling author, speaker, intuitive, and coach. Join me as we reimagine all that our most intimate relationships can become. Today's episode is an offshoot of our conversation series that I'm calling Lived Experiences. In it, we hear life stories from the people who live them with the intention of cultivating understanding, empathy, and connection. There's so much power in storytelling, which can also create an opening for self-reflection and awareness. My guest today is Niki Manavi, an educator and guide. Niki shares her story about how she broke down her past programs and beliefs about how relationships should be to create the space and opening for the relationship with her cosmic soul partner. But first, a little about her. Niki Manavi is a cosmic physician, educator, and guide, pioneering quantum spirituality and integrative health through higher self-development, cosmic soul alliance, and bioharmony wellness. As a transmutation artist, DNA decoder, and quantum energy healer, she empowers individuals to unlock their cosmic potential so that they can embody their superhuman status and fully cultivate the skills, gifts, and talents of their signature frequency and source code blueprint to live an extraordinary life. Certified in various disciplines, including functional genomics, functional nutrition, gene keys, cognitive and emotional transformation, nervous system repatterning, hypnosis, and parts work coaching, she designed a signature zero-point healing method aimed to materialize full integration with your true identity as an unlimited creator being. Let's get into the conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Relationship Diversity Podcast. I've got a great guest for you today, and I'm really excited about this story that we're going to hear. My guest today is Niki Manavi, and we're going to talk about the energetic side or the non-physical aspects of relationships. She's going to share her story of her relationship and how it doesn't fit in to the labeling of how we typically label relationships, which, I love anything that is outside of the typical societal narrative of relationships. I'm really excited about this discussion about the non-physical, the energetic side of relationships, because although I don't talk about it a lot in this podcast, this is really the part of me, this non-physical, inexplicable with words aspect of myself that I've found the most healing in. I've done a lot of talk therapy, a lot of even somatic therapy in my body, but really when I started to focus in on the energetics and the non-physical aspect of who I am and what I was believing that I was, that everything really catapulted, everything shifted after this. So super excited to have this conversation and get into this more. So with that, Niki, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Carrie. It's such a pleasure to be here today.
Yeah. I met you in a group that had nothing to do with relationships. And what I was really drawn to was that you're talking about these non physical energetic realms. And then what was most interesting was this story that you have about your partner. And so I'm wondering if you could start there and tell us a little bit more about yourself and your relationship.
Absolutely. So, the best place to start, I think, is about over 12 years ago at this point. I was reunited with my cosmic twin soul partner.
Mm.
And this was after going through a tremendous dark phase in the dark night of the soul. I mean, an absolutely dreadful, painstaking relationship that I was in prior to that. That was like the darkest of the dark of the dark. And it was severely psycho-emotionally just a challenge in every possible way I could ever be challenged. And I had zero interest of being in a relationship when I met my cosmic twin soul partner. So that's the state that I was in. I was not looking, none of that. And so I was traveling for work and I was going to this place in the evening. It was like a loungy type place. And towards the end of the night, I caught the eye of my cosmic soul partner, and it was like a radar. I just was feeling his presence there. And he just was very silent, just in the place. And when everybody was leaving, the doors were closing, everyone was paying their tab, I just felt very compelled to say to him, I don't do this. And this is so not like me, but you are incredibly beautiful.
Oh.
And he was so soft spoken. And he was like, you are too. I mean, really soft spoken. And when I interfaced with him, this is where it becomes very multidimensional. It was like time and space melted away, and I felt myself very expanded, as if extra dimensions were added to my time space reality. That's the best way I could describe it. And it was just such an interesting thing that I didn't even know what to call him. So I started calling him a soul friend because at the time I didn't have any, it didn't feel that polarity of that masculine, feminine, sexual attraction in that sort of carnal way. It felt like wholly extra dimensional, and it didn't have any of the qualities that I was used to. So that's where it was like, I don't know what this is. I have no clue. I just know that I have connected with more of myself in some way.
That's really
Yeah.
interesting that you say, I've connected with more of myself, that this person brought that connection or that feeling within you. And so after that first night that you had that meeting, the meeting and the interaction, what happened after that?
So this is where things started to take a very interesting turn. So first of all, there would be lots of signs and symbols every time we would be together, like doubles of things, double rainbows. Oh, didn't we just see those two dogs being walked? A lot of doubles. And it was just really interesting. It's like, okay. Then people would almost stop in the middle of the street and comment about us. You guys are very interesting. And so I'm already in a place where I don't even know what this is, right? I just know that I am now in contact with something that feels like an extension of myself, but it's non-carnal. It doesn't have the typical dating things. And I didn't know what was going on because my cosmic twin soul partner and husband, he didn't have any of the typical asking me out on a date, doing all of the things that you would typically expect when you're meeting and courting and all of that. So
Mhm.
we would sit on the phone and be like total silence. And
Wow.
I just was like, I don't know what's going. Okay, I guess we're going to just listen to each other breathe. So we would be together, and I'm more of the being able to speak and communicate. And so I would tell him, okay, I'm going to be in town. We can meet. And we would sit in parks and be together. And I noticed after being around him very peculiar things. Like he didn't know certain words that would be super common. His balance was off. It was almost like he was completely out of body and he was not experiencing the same reality that everyone else was experiencing. The difference is that we were so connected on that non physical level that didn't trump the relationship because typically you wouldn't be able to go very far in a relationship like that because he's not courting, he's not doing any of the stuff, he's not saying anything, he's not building it in the way that we would normally do. So my spiritual sciencey, quantum healing, investigative self was then like, what is going on here? So I started really from that healing aspect, really looking at things like what is going on. And so I figured out through my research and that he had a lot of spectrum-like tendencies.
Mm.
And I knew that this was not him having a disorder. This was a knowing. This was an issue with his holy, multidimensional, interdimensional essence and presence not being able to assimilate to this polarized 3D matrix system. And it just was something that I just knew. I knew there was nothing wrong with him. This was like an issue with assimilating to this reality. So it was very clear to me. But that still didn't help me on the relationship front.
Right. Right. It's interesting that you say that about spectrum. I'm thinking you're saying autistic spectrum because I've found in my work as an intuitive, specifically observing younger children, teenagers, I've observed kids on that autism spectrum, and that is exactly what I see them pulling information from different dimensions, and it's more complicated to bring it into this three-dimensional world and then getting and communicating it with words that are very three-dimensional. The language that we have been taught to communicate with are these words that sometimes seem so deficient to the bigger picture of what's going on. And so I can imagine as this soul friendship is starting to develop and not having those words to communicate can affect how you're trying to figure everything out and the meaning that you're trying to find with it. So take us through what happened after that.
So what happened after that is I just didn't allow that issue to overturn the love. It was almost like these very rites of passage type tests for me as an individual. Like really going toe to toe with totally dismantling and destroying my program. So it was almost like the love of my existence or the program. So we're going to have to choose. And it was
Mm.
like the program just didn't even hold the candle to the eternal love that we shared. And it's very different than a typical romantic love because, again, there wasn't the telling you all the things you want to hear and any of those Cinderella vibe type scenarios that were programmed to believe that certain things need to take place in order for you to know that this is the person for you. So that all of that was completely destroyed and the love just kept blossoming more and more, becoming more palpable. And even we would go out and I'd be like, oh, this is my soul friend, Johnny. And it's like, yeah, yeah, right. Well, when are you guys getting married? We would literally go into places and the bouncer or the security that we knew from a specific place that we'd like to go, he would just always look at us and like, when's the wedding? Like,
Right. So the connection was felt outside of you by other people, could feel that connection that you had with him.
absolutely. And so he finally got the words together after about a year or so. We were sitting at a park in Astoria Park, and he was like, it kind of feels like you're my girlfriend. And I was like, mm-hmm. He's like, so I have to say it? And I'm like, well, if you have something to say, yeah, say it. And he was like, well, will you be my girlfriend? And I was like, it was so sweet and so innocent. And from that point, I had a choice. I knew it was going to be difficult to put the label on it and really claim this relationship for what it is and move out of the soul friend scenario and move into what this is. And I was like, yeah. I said, well, actually, no, I didn't say yes right away. I said,
Oh,
let me think about it.
oh,
I said, yeah, I'll get back to you.
oh my gosh.
I really needed to, because it was really a conflict in my inner body, because I knew the deficit in his development. I knew where instinctively that this was going to be a very long journey. This was going to be very hard. And this was going to continue to destroy and dismantle everything that I thought was what I'm supposed to want or need or how to behave. And that's why I needed that time. But I ended up giving him the keys to my apartment and was like, yes.
What I love about this story is that is a very much an illustration of the diversity of how relationships can be. And specifically, I say a lot, a unique person plus a unique person equals a unique relationship. So you've got yourself and Johnny, two very unique individuals with a unique way of understanding relationships or being innocent to the idea of relationships, unique ways of communicating, the unique beliefs that you had to break down to really decide, yes, I'm going to go forward in this connection, in this relationship. So there's a lot of what I talk about in another realm, in the non physical, of the diversity of how relationships show up. And so after you finally processed everything and decided, yes, I want to move forward with this, what did your relationship look like at that point?
Well, the activations, initiations started to get really, really intense. So it would be like I'd be walking down the street, minding my own business on my way to work, and I would just have activation of very high oscillating, high frequency resonances of blasts of cosmic energy. That's the best way I can describe it. And it seemed to increase. I have had probably maybe 3 or 4 spread out throughout my journey before then. These cosmic frequencies that were just basically, I felt like detonating, and I had no words to describe it. And of course, I went on my spiritual search to put names and labels to things to try and help me understand it. But when Johnny and I were together and officially together, these initiations just compounded. They became faster, they became more frequent, and it was just growing and growing and growing. And so there was that part, that spiritual component for myself and my personal growth. And then there was the challenge of Johnny being able to navigate the world. And so that's where a lot of my investigation into integrative health and quantum spirituality and all of the things came into play, even functional genomics. I really went far and wide to uncover what was going on with him. So it became very much also a healing journey in that. It's because the root of our relationship is this eternally connected essence that was always there and cannot be touched by anything that was playing out. And that was the distinction that I learned from this, was like, okay, this is the difference between a program that we're playing out in terms of, let's say we're in a movie. Okay, this is the cast, this is the crew, this is the stage, this is the role, this is the script. But then there's the actual consciousness that all of this takes place in. And so as we were together, that awareness of the consciousness that all of this takes place in was so obvious and evident that with all of the challenges through his health, nothing would shake that awareness. So it was just immovable, unshakable. And so that was the anchor to all of the trials and tribulations that would happen. So we did a lot of things to get his health back on track. And he started healing very, very rapidly. He had extreme brain inflammation from a childhood trauma. So that was part of it. There were adverse reactions from vaccinations that he had. That was part of it. There was a lot to it. So one by one, we had to take that down, unwind it, and rewire him. And then really getting into all those archetypes, the miasms, all of that stuff, because he comes from a very ancient tradition. And that's also true for me too. So my background is Greek and
Mm.
his is Ethiopian. And even in history, there's some type of bond between Greece and Ethiopia. We were in some island, I think it was Mykonos, and there was this guy who was part of the military, and he was telling us, he was like, oh, there's a really strong connection between Greece and Ethiopia because of what happened during these wars and all this stuff. So I was like, oh, very interesting. But when it came to Johnny's healing, his Ethiopian heritage has a lot of sexual trauma. Okay, so that was another huge clue on why he was not able to assimilate his greater awareness or his higher oscillating frequency into this because he had all of those lower chakra blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about like they do some very deep things, especially with women. There's a lot of trauma. I won't get into all of the gory details, but there is serious sexual trauma on that. So I knew that was a clue. So we had to really deal with a lot of that miasmic stuff that's hit the background of his blueprint. And once we started dealing with that and dismantling that, he started coming into form. Because before then, it was like even his hands, they were light as a feather, as if he'd never touched the grid of earth.
Wow.
Like they were his feet, like one of the very first things that I did in his healing journey was just ground his feet, like literally push his feet into the ground.
Mhm.
And it was just my instinct that was coming through to help him. And so the healing part of our journey took the main stage of our entire relationship, which meant a lot of sacrifice for me. So imagine like I'm thinking, when are we going to get married? Are we going to have kids? All the normal things that you would think. And it's just everything was completely delayed. We didn't get married until 7 years after we were together, until he was a little bit more cognizant, because he had no concept of what marriage, like we're already married. Like we have to do stuff like that. Like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Spiritual. He didn't even have a concept of it. That was very hard for me because I had to let go of a lot and be very patient and really let go of all of the ideas that I had of when certain things were supposed to happen and running out of time or, what's
Right.
my life going to be or what, it was very, very difficult. But through all of that, because the baseline of our relationship is that consciousness, is that love, there was always a deep friendship. And as he started coming into form more, wisdom would just start coming out of his mouth, the things that I needed to hear to help me and things like that. So it was a beautiful journey that we took through that basically 12 years, which is very interesting because those are the 12 archetypes, you know.
Oh.
So it's like really going through that 12. And
Uh-huh.
I also see that in spirituality, you might hear of at times that there's higher dimensional 12-strand DNA
Yes.
also. I feel
Yeah.
like that 12 is really important in our journey because after that 12 years, miraculously, he's now completely functional. He's completely back on his feet. He's able to navigate the outer world. You could never tell that he was in the state of being that he was in prior.
Wow. Well, I am convinced on this, but for anyone who out there who's listening and going, what in the world? I will say that I've had similar miraculous, seeming miraculous in the physical world healing when looking at these non-physical energetic realms. And I have also had many clients who have had these pretty miraculous shifts where they've been in maybe talk therapy. And I think talk therapy has its place for sure. But I'm just saying we are bigger than just our bodies. At least I believe that. And I've also found the healing modalities that I work with are energetic. And it just seems to get to the nooks and crannies that other therapies miss. And it sounds like a very similar thing where you did all of this quantum work, all of this energetic work to bring him in his body. And I've met a lot of kids, a lot of people who never land in their body. They never land in their body. They stay in their head or they stay outside of their body. And so it's a process to come into the 3D world. And so where is your relationship right now? What does your relationship right now in this day in 2024 look like?
Well, there's a feeling of deep inner peace to see Johnny doing well. I've
Mhm.
always wanted him to do well in the outer world without needing my translation of it. And I
Mhm.
can say wholeheartedly that he can do that now.
Mhm.
And it's like my soul feels at rest every day. The way that we act towards each other is so, it's like, how do I say this? It's just very out of the ordinary. So every day we cherish each other. I'm nurturing him, hugging him, loving him. Like I will not see him again when he leaves the
Mhm.
house. This is just our normal way of being every morning, hugs, kisses, like we just met. And that this doesn't go away. It's just permanent. So it's like that feeling of it's many relationships into one relationship, like almost like a mother's love, whatever you like, all the love from a friendship, a mother's love, a romantic love, all the different kinds of love, the spectrums of love
Mhm.
are all present in our daily to where even like when we're going to have guests come over, they would probably and spend like my mom's getting ready to come. She's in the country from Greece. And I'm thinking like when they come, they're they're probably gonna think it's just so weird because the way that we interact with each other is very incredibly connected and loving. And for anyone who's into astrology, Johnny has a Cancer moon and ascendant in Cancer, and my moon is conjunct Johnny's ascendant. And so that relationship, it's very, very connected and is very sensitive. It's very loving. It's very touchy feely, hands on. And so that's, I feel, my gift for having endured that long over a decade of where he didn't know how to express himself.
Mhm.
Now he's completely expressive in his hug, his touch, his embodied touch. And I feel like I got my angel back. And it's a new spectrum of relationship called interdependence. And there's some aspects in spirituality that speak on this about our next phases in evolution. So
Right.
there's this idea that we all need to be independent and you do your thing and I do my thing. And it's about protecting our sense of control and not being overridden and having our own identity and things like that. But after you pass certain stages of your individuation, there then becomes this interdependence where it's like this awareness that we're 100% connected and wired for connection, and human connection is intrinsic for our development in so many ways. And so that's how it feels. We're interrelated and interdependent, but we have our own completely different individuated selves that are not in conflict with each other. So there's no power struggle, there's no defense in that way. And so the connection just gets to be very authentic, whole, two wholes coming together like in a web of interweaving this constellation of interwoven love, I would say.
Right. I've seen that explained as moving from codependent to independence to interdependence is the next level. And the difference in my mind between codependence and interdependence is codependence is not looking at yourself as whole. That's the whole phrase of like, you complete me, which I do not like that phrase, you complete me, because it's very codependent. But what you're saying is moving into independence, which is finding sense of self, wholeness, and then bringing that wholeness into a relationship, whatever kind or however that looks, to two wholes coming together in that interdependence relationship, I think is what you're saying. That's how I've read it.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah. And I feel that that whole journey where I felt alone a lot of times with him, but alone.
Mhm.
And I felt a lot of that was really crushing any last remnants of codependence. Because he didn't have the soothing words to say. He didn't
Mhm.
have the solution. So it forced me to find my equilibrium, to differentiate myself, to get stronger, and at the same time it was very devotional, because here I am pouring resources and time and love and effort and everything to this healing, but yet it's, instead of me losing myself into that, I actually became anchored into myself. So
Mm.
it's a twist in the movie. And I went through periods of that where you feel like because it's just so much energy that you're spending when somebody that you are connected to can't function.
Mhm.
Right. And it's a crisis, because you're like, how is this going to work? I mean, you can't even pretend you're leading a normal life because the person can't function. And that's what I think a lot of the new generations that are coming through these experiences, that are having these relationship experiences, that are catalyzing this destruction of every possible idea of what we had in the old paradigm. It forces you, because it's completely disruptive. You cannot even pretend that you're leading a normal life, or what is normal. So it's complete annihilation of normalcy
Yeah.
and moving back into diversity of relationship.
Exactly. Well, that's why I called relationship diversity a new paradigm of conscious, intentional relationships, because it does require a person to break down everything they thought they knew about relationships, because there is so much programming and a lot that we're not even conscious of, the programming of how relationships are supposed to be. And I feel like your story brings an entirely new, not new, but an entirely other dimension of this idea of diverse relationships. I have a question that I'm wanting you to clarify from your perspective how you would define cosmic twin soul partner. Because for some people, that might be really far out there, that they might not be able to grasp what that even means. So, how would you define it? And then how you've gone through a lot of explanation about how it shows up, how it's shown up in your relationship with Johnny. But I'm wondering if you could put a definition to it with the language that we have.
So I first started out with cosmic soul partner, and then I knew that was even like, can't even be described. It's not common enough for people to be able to identify anything. So I found synchronistically some information came up about a twin soul. And when that information came up, it literally described a relationship that basically moves you through the rites of passage for you to basically attain integrative spiritual upliftment. Some will call it enlightenment. So I added the word twin in there. So that's why it's hard to describe. So for me, my definition of cosmic twin soul partner is the reflection of yourself that is meant to reflect to you every aspect of your not self programming, the programming that is not you, that is based on polarity, that has nothing to do with your eternal essence. And that person is there to love you through every single phase so that you can come into that individuated state of supreme awareness, your eternal essence. And that's my definition of it. Now, I had to add the twin soul in there, even though it's not a soul that is split. I'm not sure if the audience is familiar with the terms oversoul, but it would be like, so let's say there's a group of souls that are governed by this oversoul. And imagine that it's just a reflection of yourself, another aspect of yourself in the oversoul. So the oversoul has it's one hub with all of these tendrils, and each one of them are connected to the hub of the oversoul. So imagine that you and this other person are like a fractal of connection to that oversoul, and you are there mirroring your reflections to each other so that you can come into 100% attunement and alignment with your source, with your original source, your source consciousness. So it's that journey. It's not the twin flame journey that you
Right. Well,
most
that's what
hear.
I was going to ask you about, because I think there's a lot of controversy, especially with that new, I think it's on Netflix, the new Netflix show and everything about twin flames and the danger of this idea of twin flames. So I think you're talking about something different. Is that correct?
Yes, I haven't seen the show, but for me, when I just tap into twin flame, it's based on a polarized signature.
Mm-hmm.
So it's based in a lot of polarity and that idea of like, you complete me. But what I think is dangerous more than anything is people coming up with telling people what's dangerous and what's not dangerous. Because when you encounter this relationship for yourself, there is no one on this planet who can interpret it for you.
Mm-hmm.
You will. And so there's no need to seek it. There's no need. It literally, when it will happen, you will know, because you cannot fit that relationship into a box. There will be nothing, including the descriptions of twin flames. There will be nothing that's going to really characterize it enough. You'll just know that you are now interfacing with more of your essence. So instead of soul, because all those things are separations, right? So even
Yeah.
soul is separated from source. Think of this relationship as an essence, as an essence of who you are. So it's not even in form. It's very non-physical, and it's your gateway to your source, to
Mm-hmm.
your core essence. So
Mm-hmm.
I would like to move it from soul almost to essence. But if I went around saying that, no one would ever
Right.
understand.
What do you mean? Yeah, and I think the other thing about this twin flame idea is that there is an idea that you have one. If you miss it, you are going to live a life of disconnection and pay. It's actually the way that this idea of twin flame is landing in the body is one, exactly like you said, of separation, of lack, of missing out, of my life won't be complete without this twin flame. That's the idea that I'm feeling is something that can be dangerous, because if we look around saying like I only have one twin flame and I think that's the person, but maybe it isn't the connection that's meant for you in that moment. And then there's this feeling of, oh God, I've just messed it up, or I need to actually search after something that's not in my highest and best. It's just, I like your perspective of this twin. I mean, you're using their twin, but like this soul partnership that is moving away from polarity and into unity. That is more of the idea of what this is.
Yes, and I'd love to speak on that, about that twin flame issue, just for any of the listeners. When you realize, if you really just tap into it, that there is this overarching consciousness, this intelligence that's literally the essence of life, right? This infinite intelligence. And if you really can tap into that, and it's very hard, because we were governed as human beings to believe that our choices are going to make or break us.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ever had those miracle moments or a complete alignment that you could have never conjured up or put together, then you feel that relaxedness into this intelligence that is moving you. It's moving through you. It's moving. So with that, you cannot miss anything. If you are on the path of this very deep spiritual development in this life, so this life for you is that deep spiritual development where your longing for source is bigger than any relationship that you can think of, it is highly likely that you will synchronistically be joined with your cosmic partner. And I'd like to, if I could lose all the words and just call it a cosmic partner, that would be more in resonance with how I feel about it. But I
Mhm.
have to add the soul and the twin, or nobody will understand what I'm
Mm.
pointing towards. But when your longing for source is really at the heart of your existence, that's when that relationship will come in, and there's
Mhm.
nothing that can stop it. And no matter what condition that person comes to you in, as Johnny and I are that kind of reflection through this story, nothing, even not being able to speak, even having issues, even having health problems, nothing can take it away. Nothing can destroy it. It's that powerful. So I would say if a person's really pining away for the soulmate, then you are already out of alignment with what it is that your relationship to existence itself, because that's not the focus. You know what I mean? So if you're looking for something to complete you, then yeah, you're going to go through all of that. Am I right? Am I wrong? Is this the right one? I'm not going to have that because it's missing the point. The point of these relationships is to align you with source, not to fulfill a romantic fantasy. And so my take on that is continue to move through your development. Make your development of who you are the highest and biggest priority. Make your relationship with source the highest and biggest priority. And all of your relationships will be rites of passage for your own internal development and for you to connect with your heart,
Yeah.
right? For you
Yeah.
to heal those wounds of your heart. And then you'll be aligned. Each person that you're in this relationship with will be stepping stones on your development, and it won't be this all or nothing type of thing.
Yeah. Specifically, when you're looking at non monogamy, that there is possibility for there to be soul partners, for there to be soul families. And for, I find that with more than one partner, I have more, more reflection as to what's going on within me, what I'm wanting to look at, where I am disconnected from myself, disconnected from source. There's more reflection with more partners. And I say in this podcast a lot is that the number one relationship is with self, with your healing, your own inner healing. And just to take it one step further, what you're saying is that healing is connection to oneness, connection to something bigger. We all want to feel connected, I think. We all want to feel that love, that presence, that connection. And I can definitely myself feel when that connection is, I guess, more rooted in more woundedness and separation than in healedness and wholeness. And to me, that's when I'm feeling that wholeness, that's when I'm feeling more connected to that bigger presence, which you call source, some people call God, some people call universal energy, whatever that is. So I appreciate you having this conversation with me because I know that this might be a little out there for people, but I also think that those cosmic moments are those moments where I would say for me, I feel a fullness. I'm just trying to bring it into something that someone can maybe connect with is the feeling when I'm connected to that bigger energy, I feel full and expansive instead of constricting and I want to pull back or feeling this need, this almost like carnal, like you're saying, carnal need. For me, there's nothing wrong with feeling carnal energy. I love sex and bodily pleasure and everything. And that can be expansive in the way to it as well. So there's so much in this topic. Tell us a little bit about what you do, because I know you work in this kind of quantum physics, quantum consciousness area. And so just before we leave, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your work. If someone feels really resonant and they want to understand more and learn more, tell us a little bit about what you do.
So our company is called Higher Self Development, and it's centered around quantum healing and integrative health. The background of what I do is I look at those bigger archetypal sequences and I look at functional genomics and really look at how when you're running your script, your life script at a lower oscillating frequency, certain challenges will keep recurring. And I look at all of the programming around that. So I not only look at the quantum healing and energetic aspect, but I look at functional genomics and functional nutrition to support the linear body because there are specific biochemical codes. And this is really important in Johnny's journey too, is when we looked through his functional genomics, basically how your genes are functioning,
Mm.
how they are expressing themselves, how your lifestyle, your eating habits, the supplements you take are interfacing with your coded genes. And there were certain codes in his genes that he was already predisposed to have depression, to have gut permeability, and certain things like that. My work is, think of me more as a DNA decoder and a recoder. So
Mm.
I look at the genomics and we can make supplement changes, dietary changes, sleep habits, lifestyle changes, aligning those with your genes, your coded genes. And those coded genes are connected to these bigger universal archetypal themes. So I'm a big spiritual sciencey nerd. So I look at all of your coding and then I formulate a plan, and I have packages where we can do a one-on-one and we can look at your codes and see what's going on. Or I have a DNA program that goes through all of the functional genomics, the lifestyle, the supplements, and basically decode your programming so that you can move into harmonious relationship with yourself. And then I also do somewhat of it's a style of hypnosis. So I call it transmutation meditation. And I will work with that coding, what I know about your coding after looking at the algorithm sequences. And then I will create these custom transmutation meditations to start to unwire that subconscious programming. And the whole premise behind what I'm doing is when we bring that unconscious to conscious, then the healing can be expedited quite a bit. But all of the negative relationship patterns are all coded in there. So I'm basically looking at the blueprint of the human being. And I know it can be shocking for the listeners to see, like, oh my gosh, all of that's coded, but it actually is literally coded like a book and a blueprint.
How do
You
you
look
do
at
those testings with functional genomics?
it's a saliva test that I
Oh.
use. And then there's another spiritual algorithm that I use that will chart all your archetypes and basically chart that whole journey. And all of those spiritual archetypes are coded to your genes. I call it spiritual genomics to functional genomics and combining those to create quantum healing.
Mm. That is fascinating. Well, wow. If that has piqued your interest out there, it has mine. How can we get in touch with you, Niki?
So the best place is just to go to my website. It's www.higherselfdevelopment.com. I also am on IG and I have a YouTube channel, and I think those will probably be linked.
Yes.
Um, but I'm not so big on those channels so much. I'm really a spiritual sciencey nerd, so I prefer to work with small groups of people or one-on-ones and do some high-level work. That's how I wake up with epiphanies and insights, and I'm more of an introvert. And so I don't have a whole lot on the social media, but feel free to connect with us and sign up to our email list so that when I put a quantum insights email out once a month so you can stay connected to our insights. And I also just created a new Spotify podcast. So
Mm.
I have only a couple episodes now, but it's really me being able to unleash my voice and insights because honestly, it's a lot when I'm
Yeah.
tapping into all of this bigger energy. It's so much more healthy for me to just speak it out and let it flow. So I'm really excited about the podcast, and it's called the Quantum Spirituality Podcast.
The Quantum Spirituality Podcast. Okay. And that's on Spotify?
It is, yes.
All right. We will link that. And this has been very enlightening. Thank you, Niki, so much for sharing your story, for being here, and for the work that you do in the world, because I think there's so many of us that are wanting to live in a happier world. And I believe that the work you're doing is helping to clear the old and make room for the new. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carrie. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you about this and sharing. I've got chills so many times during this conversation with you. It feels very fabulous and wonderful and to share this with everyone. And I just want to just leave some parting words with the audience that you are love, you are connection, and you have an intrinsic relationship with your core essence, however you want to name that or whatever it is. And when you decode your programming, you are basically throwing out all of the things that no longer serve you. So you can do what Carrie just said is make room for the new.
Beautiful words to end with. Beautiful words. So please, everyone, if you feel aligned with this, please go connect with Niki. We'll have all of her information in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening to the Relationship Diversity Podcast. Want to learn more about relationship diversity? I've got a free guide I'd love to send you. Go to www.relationshipdiversitypodcast.com to get yours sent right to you. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast. You being here and participating in the conversation about relationship diversity is what helps us create a space of inclusivity and acceptance together. The more comfortable and normal it is to acknowledge the vast and varied relating we all do, the faster we'll shift to a paradigm of conscious, intentional, and diverse relationships. New episodes are released every Thursday. Stay connected with me through my YouTube channel, where I'll give you even more free resources and information all about relationship diversity. I'm super excited to go deeper into YouTube because I'll be able to connect and have conversations directly with you. You'll find the link in the show notes. Stay curious. Every relationship is as unique as you are. Wondering why you never seem to find lasting fulfillment in your relationships? Or do you create the same kinds of relationship experiences over and over again? Can you never seem to find even one person who you want to explore a relationship with? Have you just given up hope altogether? If this sounds like you, my recent book, Why Do They Always Break Up With Me, is the perfect place to start. The foundation of any relationship, whether intimate or not, is the relationship we have with ourselves. In the book, I lead you through 8 clear steps to start or continue your self-exploration journey. You'll learn about the importance of self-acceptance, gratitude, belief shifting, and forgiveness, and given exercises to experience these life-changing concepts. This is the process I use to shift my relationships from continual heartbreak to what they are now, fulfilling, soul-nourishing, compassionate, and loving. It is possible for you. This book can set you on a path to get there. Currently available through Amazon or through the link in the show notes.